All right, gang, we are rolling. Happy day to you. My name is Erik Hatch of Hatch Realty and Hatch Coaching based out of Fargo, North Dakota, coming at you with pretty much weekly webinars, trying to deliver a ton of value, give you great free content for you to digest, for you to work with, and for you to help grow your world. I got to tell you, this has been a pretty spectacular year. Hatch Realty, which serves, yes, it's a brokerage, but I function only as a team. I run a real estate team and have done so since 2012. And so 9 years into it now, this year, we're going to sell about 850 homes. Our biggest year to date, last year we did 635. This year we'll do about 850 deals. And I have to tell you, the numbers, the money, the finances of it can complicate a lot of this. And the theme of today's webinar is how to double your profit in just 12 months. What's crazy is this. I don't think this real estate game is about money. And I want to make sure I start with that and you understand this because as a real estate coach and as somebody leading a real estate team, it's oftentimes talked about, but we need to make sure that we have our foundation in order. And here's my view on money. I think that money is like oxygen. It is super important in our lives. Oxygen is necessary. It's the only way that we breathe. Money and finances and profit are the only way that we breathe when it comes to our real estate business. But it's not the purpose of it. The purpose of my life is not to breathe, and the purpose of my business is not to make money. The purpose of my life and my business are the same, and that is to make an impact and to influence and to do good. And so I think that's at the core of all this. Please understand as we go through these numbers, this is not about building money for money's sake. This is about being healthy so that we can make a deeper impact. And the more money we make, the more opportunities are afforded to us. Full transparency is I think that real estate is an amazing vehicle to make money. I'll give you some insight is I graduated from college and took a job doing youth ministry in the early 2000s. It was 2003. And I went to work in my local church and I made $24,600 in a year. Now I look at what real estate is afforded to me and to many of us that are watching this and the amount of cash that we get to make. Like my wife is a first grade teacher. She's been teaching for 15 years and she's like at the top of her pay scale when it comes to having continuing education, doing great things. She has her master's, she has all this extra education and she's been there for 15 years. And I look at what she makes and she's grossly underpaid. And I look at what I make, and frankly, I think I'm grossly overpaid. I'm not complaining about it, but I want us to make sure that we have the same perspective that we in real estate are afforded this opportunity to make crazy amounts of money. We have big risk associated with that, yes. And yet, since 2012, I've been making doctor money or greater than that. And I am certainly nowhere near as intelligent as a doctor. So we need to count our blessings. We need to keep our perspective as we dive into this because I want to help you double, triple, quadruple your income. And I want to share with you some of the things that I've used to get here. So please, if you're watching live, let this be a conversation and not just a presentation. Ask questions, put them in the chat box, send me a private question, whatever that may be. We are going to get to it and we are going to dive in heartily. I do have some slides I'm going to be bouncing back and forth with. Zoom has been awkward lately and a little bit slow on things. And so my goal is to try to be less clunky than what it feels like on my end right now. Hopefully it's smooth on your end, but we are going to go right here and we are going to certainly talk about how to double our profit in just 12 months. I want to share with you what's happened in Hatch Realty. I told you at the top of this with our team that we went from 835 transactions and we'll finish this year around 850 transactions. Our sales are up 35%. Our volume is up even more than that, but our sales are up 35%. But look at that profit. Our profit for our team is up over 300%. And you may be asking yourself right now, like, Erik, how is that possible? How are sales up 35%, but profit is up over 300%? And we need to understand this, is that all of our profit is in that final 10 or 20% push. For us, we found our profit in this final 35% push. And a lot of us with teams or with businesses where you have added leverage, you're buying a lot of things, we're working to pay our bills, but we're not working to make our profit. And we will make our profit in that final push, that final 10%. And I'm going to show you specifically what that means here through our slides. Now, with all this being said, I want you to know and understand with full transparency that I'm not going to tell you like every time that I make, because there's amazing assumptions that happen when we talk about the money that we make. People will assume a lot of incorrect things. I hear people talk about percentages of like, in fact, I even saw in a group chat today, somebody had said, I'm profiting X percent, and it was like 50% from their business. And so I had to go and ask questions. And I had to say, well, what about a salary? Are you paying yourself a salary? What about commission for your own personal production? Are you paying yourself those things? And all of those pieces are going to be given really great articulation through the following slides. And so stay with me here. Again, I encourage you to take some notes, write this down, and this should be hopefully of big value to you because these are learned as we've gone on the road to close almost 5,000 transactions now as a real estate team over the last 8 years. We'll pass 5,000 in early 2021, and we've learned a lot, especially about the numbers. So let's make sure you understand this, as I think that it is imperative for you to pay yourself in 3 buckets. These 3 buckets have very, very different intentions, and I want to make sure that you understand them in full. The people I'm talking to right now are the rainmakers or the company owners, the people who are at the top of their totem pole. I believe that if you are running a real estate team or you're running a real estate business where it's you just in your own production, whatever that may be, I think that number one, you should be paying yourself a salary. You may be saying, Eric, what should that salary be? Well, I'll tell you, when I was full-time in my real estate business, I was paying myself $150,000 a year. Now, funny enough is you have a lot of taxes that come out of that. Now I only work but 2 days a week on my real estate team. My other 3 days a week, I'm coaching and doing webinars and trying to provide value and that sort. And so I'm only 2 days a week in my business. My business is a $6 million business. We're gonna close 850 deals. That's $6 million in GCI and $200 million in volume. So for me, if I was full-time in that business, I'd probably be paying myself now about $200,000 if I was a full-time CEO. I am a part-time CEO with the time that I give, and so I pay myself $100,000 as a salary. Taxes come in and my paychecks are actually only like $550 every 2 weeks. It's really almost laughable how much taxes are taken out of this, because I'm making sure that I'm not just paying my taxes very much at the end of the year. So number one is, if you are running a business and everybody watching this is running a business of some sort, you should be paying yourself a salary. I think that if your GCI, or gross commission income, is under $1 million, I think that you should be paying yourself a salary of $40 to $60 or $70,000. I think that if your GCI is from, say, 1 million to 5 million, or maybe 1 million to 4 million, you should be paying yourself a salary of about $150,000. Again, you can adjust this and tweak this all you want. There's tax strategies with all this that I'm not going to get into. But if you are, as a company, doing a GCI higher than $5 million a year, I think that there's an opportunity for you to get really smart about your money and start paying yourself a salary of $200,000, maybe more. And the reason why I say that is because this is so important. If you're gone tomorrow, somebody has to fill that role of CEO. And Ashley's asking, is this recorded? Yeah, it sure is recorded. We will send out the recording to you afterwards, Ashley. So for sure that's coming your way. If you're gone tomorrow and you're paying somebody to do your job, how much would you have to pay them? To be the CEO of your company, and I think the CEO wears these 3 hats, and you may wear more than this, but I believe that these are the hats of a CEO. Your job is to cast vision for the company. You are like that growth motor. That means marketing is often a part of that. It means seeing and understanding who needs to go where, and learning from people. I spend a lot of time learning from folks on the internet and watching YouTube videos and copying people much smarter than me. So number one, to cast vision. Number 2, I think that a great CEO leads the leaders. Not everybody. I don't think that you lead everybody. Yes, you're the owner or the CEO of the organization, but I think you have your key people that you are essentially spending all that time with, giving your best to those folks. The third responsibility of a CEO and the final responsibility is to coach, to constantly provide mentorship and guidance for your company. As that CEO, if you're gone tomorrow, is that a full-time job? Is that a part-time job? And that'll determine that pay. Because if you're going to pay yourself in 3 buckets, you need to be paying yourself, taking that money out of your operating account and seeing your P&L accordingly. When I take my CEO salary out, that just goes to my personal checking account, right? So that's bucket number 1. Bucket number 2, and this is where most people get it wrong because then they don't know the true numbers of their business. Most people get it wrong because what they do is, as the rainmaker, they're leaving their commissions in their business. If they're doing production, they're leaving all of those dollars in their business, and they have a false sense of actual profit. The profit only comes after you pay those previous 2 buckets. And those profit numbers that we have as a goal is the 3rd bucket. And I'm going to unpack this more further, but I want you to understand that the first bucket is salary that you're paying yourself. The second bucket is commission that you're paying yourself. And I take that commission out of my team operating account and I put it into a separate account. That money shouldn't commingle. Because if I'm paying my agents a 50-50 split on the buy side and a 30-70 split on the sell side, when I do production, it should be that exact same split. And that money comes out of company bucket and it goes into a separate bucket. Well, guess what? I still own that bucket. I'm still making that money. But if I want to know the true profitability of my company, you have to pay yourself a commission. You have to pay yourself the same commission you're paying everybody else. And I promise you, most everybody is doing this wrong, and they're leaving their own personal commissions to run their team. Back in 2014, I got out of production. My daughter Finley was born October 28th, 2014, and that was my last day in production. I've been out now for just over 6 years. And when that happened, I received an unbelievable backhanded slap. It was such an eye-opening experience because I was doing our team in 2014, we did 411 transactions, but I was 153 of those 411 transactions. And I left all my commission in that company bucket. I took out a salary. I was paying myself, I think, $100,000 a year at that. And I was living off that $100,000 and that was fine. And all my commission was staying in there. And so I thought we were really healthy as a team and we were ready to have me move out of production. I was so wrong. Because I hadn't been paying myself, I didn't realize how much money I was actually using of my own cash to fuel the growth of my business. I'm not saying that there aren't times and ways in which you use your own cash, but right now, a lot of our teams are being fueled by the production of the agent and they're leaving all of that commission in there. And it's financially irresponsible and you don't know the true numbers of your company and you can't make great decisions to grow when you're looking at this. So understanding these 3 buckets has me now transition, and we are going to go to my next slide. And here it is. Again, I said Zoom was moving a little bit slow, but we're going to get there, gang, and it's going to be good. I got to tell you, if you're not paying yourself in the 3 buckets, and if you haven't opened up another account to pay yourself commission, please start doing so now. This is going to help you know your numbers, and when you know your numbers, it's easier to double your profit. Moving on here. The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, it is like the Bible for building a team and building a real estate enterprise of a sort. I swear by the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. It taught me so much, and I'll share with you. Here's what it says. The first is COGS. COGS is cost of goods sold. These are the commissions that you're paying. MREA says 29.2% should go to COGS. I just rounded to 30% for simple math. That means that you're paying commissions on average. What MREA says is you should pay 20% to an agent doing listings and 40% to an agent doing buyers, thus averaging out at that 30% or so. And frankly, that is a great guidance piece. But in my world, in my ecosystem, with my average sales price of $240,000, I can't get away with having great talent that will only work for 20 or 40% commission. I choose consciously to pay my team and to pay them a lot. I average 45% for my cost of goods sold. I recommend you being at 40% because I'm overpaying my team. And once you give it, you can't take it away. So we don't start everybody at that 45%. They have to earn their way up. But I recommend fully you paying 40%, I think, to people that are representing your buyers and sellers. Maybe it's 35 on the sell side and 45 on the buy side, and that averages out at 40%. Again, I think you can get away with paying people all different levels, but there are consequences with all of those choices as you're choosing to pay people. If you're paying somebody a low commission, the chance of them sticking around for a long period of time is really moot. I will tell you one of the untold, unkept secrets of all of this, of our massive growth in the last year, is because we've had retention. In the last 2 years, I've lost 0 producers. 0 producers. I've lost 2 ISAs and 2 admin. I've lost 0 producers, and we basically didn't add to our team, and we've grown by 35%, and our profit has grown by 300% because we've retained great people, because I've chosen to pay them a little bit more. And now all of a sudden, that's something I'd bet on any day. So first, cost of goods sold, MREA says 30%. I recommend 40%. In fact, I do 45 myself. Second, are expenses. Your expenses include your salary as the rainmaker, your rent, your leads and your marketing, your insurance, and every other cost that's associated with your business. MREA says 29.2%. Again, I rounded that to 30%. I think in a high-priced market, I have a friend in the California market who's done 111 deals this year to the tune of $170 million in volume. Holy cow, my buddy Daniel is crushing it because their average sales price is like $1.5 or $1.6 million. His expenses for the year, including his salary, are 19%. Because it doesn't take as many staff members and whatnot in order to take care of that amount of business. He just has more meat on the bone. If you're in a place where your average sales price is under $200,000, your expenses are probably higher because you're still buying leads and you're still paying for staff members, and that gets really difficult. So I recommend, if you're in that mid-price, in that 225 to 325 market or so, I think that I'd recommend expenses being at 35% or less. Finally, profit, this final number, this is where I think, and this is your final bucket. Remember, you're paying yourself a salary, you're paying yourself a commission, and then the actual breakdown for your profit and loss statement will be 40% recommended by MREA, and 40% would be unbelievable. But unless you're in a really high price market, I don't think it's possible for a large team. For me, I'd gun for 25% profit. Really, remember, I'm paying 45% instead of 40 on the cost of goods sold. So my 25% that I recommend to people, my actual target for my own team is only 20%. But remember, we're a $6 million team doing $200 million in volume, and I work in it 2 days a week. So if I have a side gig that's making me hopefully 7 figures, I'm not complaining. So be it. All right, so let's move on. Again, if you have questions or comments, please fire them at me and I'll do my best to answer them. As I want to tell you, though, that there's 3 ways to make more money, and I'm going to jump off this because I don't want you to just stare at this. Let's talk about the first one, and that is to sell more. You want to make more money? Guess what? You should sell more houses. Duh. Isn't that the goal of all of our worlds, that we want to sell more houses? And I would challenge you to say, well, who's going to do that production? Because is it going to be you? Is it going to be some of your team members? What does that look like? If you want to sell more houses, there's a strategy of adding things, but I also think that there's a strategy of saying no to things. We say yes to almost everything, don't we? Every opportunity that comes along, every shiny object that all of a sudden catches our attention, and we try out a lot of things. If you want to sell more houses, I think you actually need to do less stuff, to become less generalized and more specified, to have your area of things that you crush. If Hatch Realty is going to sell 850 homes this year, here's our lead sources. Number 1 lead source, almost 55 to 60% of our business, past clients and sphere of influence. We've said we're going to target those people that have big financial opportunities for us. I'm going to incentivize my team members to go and get it. And now 55 to 60% of all of our business, past client sphere of influence. Then we have pay-per-click. We use Sierra Interactive as our CRM. We love Ylopo as well. And that's going to be about 15% of our business. We then have Zillow. Zillow is such an interesting conversation, but for us, it's been really healthy and good. And that represents almost 15% of our stuff as well. And so take a look. For us to do 850 homes in a year, we're not working with 30 different lead sources. We're working with past client sphere of influence, pay-per-click and Ylopo and Zillow. And that represents almost 90% of our production. Less should be more. And if you're looking to sell more houses as a strategy, well, guess what? I think that that's one of the best ways to get there, is to do less and not more lead sources and that sort. Second way to make more money is to spend less. Please write that down, because it is something that we talk about and rarely do we actually practice, is spending less. Full transparency here, to run Hatch Realty, to run a $6 million business, my expenses are around $170,000 a month. Those are salaries, that's marketing, that's rent, that's insurance, that's all those things. $170,000 a month. That's $500,000 every 3 months. That's $1 million every 6 months. That's $2 million every year just to run our business. And when COVID hit, I, like almost the rest of you, we were like, oh crap, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And some of us are really staff heavy. I've been staff heavy up until this year. One of the reasons why my profits sucked last year is because I had too many staff members, because I did this one mistake. And that is that I bought it before I earned it. We talked about growing, and so we added leverage, but we didn't add sales first. Lead with revenue and keep your cash healthy. So when we go back to COVID time, when COVID first hit, we took a look and we said, where can we cut and what can we do? And we found about $20,000 to cut. Turns out real estate is really healthy through COVID for most of us. And because of that, I didn't have to make those cuts. So like we made them, but then we turned them back on, because now as we've increased sales by 35%, we need that extra leverage and that extra volume. But for you, I would challenge you to do this homework piece, to look at your expenses if you're a rainmaker and try to figure out what are 20% of your expenses that you can cut. If you need to do less instead of doing a whole bunch of things, what should you be saying no to? Because are you holding your money accountable? Are you looking at all of the things in your checkbook and saying, am I getting at least a 3-to-1 return on my investments? But I need to challenge you to make sure that you are paying yourself a commission, just like you're paying your agents a commission, before you hold that money accountable to a 3-to-1 return on investment. If you're paying a 50-50 split, guess what? That 3-to-1 ROI actually is a 6-to-1 gross ROI. Meaning if you're spending $10,000 on Zillow a month, you better be getting $60,000 back in Zillow every month in closed transactions. And when I say that, you all are probably doing the same thing that I would do. And I'm looking at it going, oh crap. I'm not making 3-to-1, but I'm hoping and praying that it's going to get better. Hope is a great thing to have, but a terrible business strategy. Do not hope your finances work their way out. You can't have emotion with those finances. You only need to have logic with it. Finally, the third way in which to make more money is to find efficiencies. These are so important. You should capture this screen. You should print your screen right now. You should take a picture with your phone. You should write all this down, because number 3 is the way to work smarter, not harder. Selling more is harder. Spending less is sometimes harder, but finding efficiencies is working smarter. I used to cringe at transaction fees, thinking that they were greedy and selfish and just how dare you do that. Looking at these transaction fees now, and I watched my profit margin for years and years shrink. We would sell more, but I kept spending my way to the top instead of earning my way to the top. And I'm like, where's all my profit going? And I recognized that we had to bring about this transaction fee so that I could have a healthy company. Remember, money is like oxygen. It helps us to breathe. And I needed to be healthier. We weren't breathing because we were suffocating a little bit. And so we started a $495 transaction fee for buyers that was mandated. And for sellers, that was a part of the negotiation piece. Work like this. We started with, in our world, we charge 7%. And you see that on B there for find efficiencies is to collect a higher commission. We start at 7% plus the $495 transaction fee, but we'll negotiate. So if we go 7 plus $495 and they won't say yes to that, then you go 7% without the $495, like a feather falling to the floor. If they say no to that, 6.5 plus the $495, 6.5 without the $495, 6 with and 6 without. And we have 6 different negotiation points for our listing agents. Well, turns out that we were able to collect a lot of transaction fees. Let's do some simple math here, okay? Let's say I collect transaction fees on all of my buy side, but none of my listing side. And that's not true. I collect on transaction fees on the listing side all day. But just for simple math, if we say that I'm doing 400 transactions on the buy side and we collect $495 on each of those, gang, if your math is as sharp as mine is, that's $200,000 to the bottom line. I used to feel guilty charging it because I'm like, why would I charge this? It feels selfish. I wasn't making enough money to keep a healthy business. And I needed to be able to employ the best people. I needed to be able to empower the best people. And we needed to be able to market at the level in which we deserved, that our clients deserve. And so because I stand behind our marketing and I believe that we are playing a different game than everybody else, I'm unapologetically charging this transaction fee now. I'm making great money on it because we're delivering a higher level of service. If you're playing a game where you can say we are delivering a higher value than other people, it means you can charge more, which goes to number 2, or B, I should say, is to collect a higher commission. I think you can charge, if you're in the right market, you can charge a 7% on the listing side if you're worth it. On the buy side, though, this is where it gets really tricky. And I want to dive into this here for just a moment. The buy side is really interesting because our buyer contracts allow us to put in there what we think that we should be getting paid. And in our world, we put 3% on all our buyer contracts. If you're not getting your buyers under contract, well, you're not doing the game right, as far as I'm concerned. And that's a totally different webinar for a totally different day. But if you're getting them under contract and you're putting on that contract that you're going to work for 3%, and that 3% is going to come from the listing side. If that listing side doesn't pay you the full 3%, that buyer is still on the hook to pay you that 3%. And you have that conversation with them right away. Hey, if for some reason the listing side is only paying 2.5%, we're contracted for 3%. It's what my brokerage, what my company requires. And so that will be added as a closing cost for this. Or I can try to negotiate it and get the seller to pay. Which would you like? And every time they're going to say, well, I really want the seller to pay. Like, that sounds awesome. I really want the seller to pay. And we worked with our North Dakota Real Estate Commission attorney. His name is Casey. And we have language in there now that says this is how you can go and negotiate it. Because the buyer can't ask, like we can't, I as the buyer agent, I can't ask for more commission. But the buyer can. And I want to share with you the language here. I got to pull it up here very quickly. Here is what it says. I had it ready and then I just messed it up. Here's what it says. At the time of closing, the seller shall, on behalf of the buyer, pay directly to Hatch Realty a commission of blank %, which is additional from the MLS co-op of the selling price of blank to fulfill the buyer's contractual obligation to the buyer's broker. This payment is made solely as a convenience to the buyer and does not in any way imply an agency relationship between the seller and Hatch Realty. Now, I have that there, and you can copy that, but you need to have a lawyer look at that and approve it. And it is going to be contentious, I promise you. But if you think you're worth 3%, you should be charging 3% every single time. There's no way about it. You should be charging 3% every single time. If that's what you think that you're worth. Because if you want to double your profit, you don't necessarily need to sell more houses. You just need to be charging what you're worth. Finally, let's look at C here to increase your conversion. There's 5 conversion pieces that we track at all times to try to make sure that we are following through and adding extra touch points on all this. I'm not going to spend a plethora of time on this, but I do want you to walk away saying, these are the 5 conversion pieces I need to get better at. Again, print the screen or take a picture because I'm about to change this here in like 10 seconds. These conversion pieces, if you can tweak each one of them and get an extra 2 or 3% out of each of these, you will make hand over fist more money next year than you made this last year. So let's get into our numbers and knowing our numbers with really great specificity, okay? First is your COGS, your cost of goods sold. Once you go through, and this is really easy to do, when your year is up or when your month is up, you can take a look at your GCI, that's your gross commission income. Let's say you brought in $100,000. And then you look and you say, I paid out $45,000 to my agents, or let's use even simpler math. I paid out $40,000 to my agents. You simply take that 40,000, the commission that you paid, your cost of goods sold, and then you divide that by your GCI. And that'll tell you 40% is the answer. So your cost of goods sold based on this example is 40%. That should stay the same. I mean, it may vary like a percentage or two depending on the listings and buys that you have, but that percentage should stay about the same. Please note that that percentage is locked in. Number 2 talks about expenses. The number of expenses, your salaries, your marketing, that should be locked in and you shouldn't be irresponsible with that. Yes, there's sometimes when you're on an annual renewal for something or you're front ending some expenses or you buy a vehicle or you have to buy a bunch of new computers or signs or whatever that may be, that'll throw off your expenses a little bit. But frankly, for us, that number of $170,000 a month for Hatch Realty, that is our constant. Some months it's 165, some months it's 175 or 180, but we know that that number shouldn't change. Our cost of a good percentage doesn't change, and our expense number doesn't change. So here's what we need to know, because this is where all your profit is. I'm clapping because it's so important. All your profit is here. Okay. Number 3 is the point that should hopefully be this like big aha for you. You need to calculate what your break-even GCI is monthly. So you need to know what your cost of goods percentage is, and you need to know what your expenses are. Really, what you need to do then is, let's take that $100,000 a month GCI. You brought in the month of October of 2020, you brought in $100,000 in GCI. Your cost of goods, you look at the percentage and you say that's 40%. And that number is always going to be 40%. So that's locked in. If you do $200,000, that's 80,000. You do 150,000, that's 60,000, because that number is always 40%. Doing $100,000 means, guess what? You just had $40,000 in cost of goods sold. Your expenses to run your business, that's doing $100,000 in the month of October. Let's say that's $30,000. Now, if you do $100,000 in GCI and your expenses are $30,000, that's a 30% expense percent, right? But if you do $60,000 that month, your expenses are 50%. You do you do $200,000, all of a sudden now your expenses are 15%. Do you see how the number doesn't change? It's always that 30,000, but your percent does. To figure out your profit is we need to figure out exactly what that number is. And let's use your break-even number. In this example, cost of goods sold is 40% and your expenses are 30%, or your expenses are $30,000. That means, as far as I'm concerned, that you're going to have to do this for your production. You're going to have to be bringing in, I'm going to pull up and screen share a calculator because I want to show you how to do this. All right, let's say you're doing $80,000. If you're paying out 45% or 40%, I'm sorry, I'm getting my own numbers messed up. If you're paying out 40%, that means you're left with 60%. At $80,000, you're at all of a sudden $48,000. So we can go down to 60,000, I'm paying out 40%, whoops, a daisy. If we're going down to 60,000, if I'm paying out 40%, that means I'm keeping 60. And now that gives me $36,000 left. With $36,000 left, I know that I have to pay $30,000 in expenses every month. That means my profit is 6,000 bucks. So we aren't at that number yet, but we're close. So now let's say, what if we do $55,000? $55,000, I pay out 40%, I keep 60. I know the number. Here we go, 50,000. If we go $50,000 times paying out 40%, meaning I keep 60%, that leaves me with $30,000 to pay my expenses. My break even number is $50,000 in GCI. If your average commission is $10,000, that means you have to close 5 houses a month. 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 is where you end up now. That $50,000 in your GCI means, guess what? You broke even for the month, but we do not do this business to break even. And knowing that number of that $50,000 a month in this scenario should bring for you, I hope, a lot of clarity, because all of your profit, in fact, 60 cents on the dollar, is waiting for you on your next deal. Look at this. Remember, the cost of goods percentage stays the same. You sell the 6th house, you still pay 40% of that, or $4,000 of that $10,000 commission. $4,000 of that goes to the agent, and $6,000 of that stays with the company. This is like a no-brainer, but also like an oh yeah. Because when you recognize now, if you sell 10 houses a month instead of 5, if 5 houses has you break even, because each one is worth 10,000 bucks, and you have to pay your cost of goods sold and your expenses, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. If you sell 5 houses, this is your break even number. But what if you sell 5 more? And now all of a sudden 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 more in GCI is there. And then you're going to pay 40% your cost of goods sold, which is essentially 2 of those 5, leaving you with pure profit on 3 of them, or really 60% profit on all 5. It's the same, reads the same as the math, because you don't have any other expenses. That means you just made 6, 12, 18, 24, $30,000 in profit in that 1 month. If you want to double your profit, it's all in above that magical number of your break-even number. For us at Hatch Realty, $170,000 are our expenses. 45% are our cost of goods sold. I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but I believe that we have to sell between 45 and 48 houses a month to break even. It's like a big undertaking, you know what I mean? But if we sell 55 houses or 65 houses or 75 houses, all those extra ones profit me 55 cents on the dollar. You'll make all your money after this number. And so my challenge to you is to know this number in your world and to study it and to pay attention to it, because when you know it, you're going to reap the benefits from it. This is my final piece. If you have some questions, I want you to ask them now. Put them in the chat box or the Q&A portion, and I will get to those. But I'm going to wrap here in the next 5 minutes. Your fastest way to profit more is actually your own production. I know that a lot of people pride themselves on getting out of production. It is like a badge of honor, like I'm not in production anymore. And then we look around saying, my business isn't making much money, but I don't want to be in production. I don't care about your ego. I care about the health of what you're doing. And I think a lot of people make the assumption that you can get into production and lose your life. But I want to share with you one of my coaching clients who's in the Seattle area. This guy runs a monstrous business. Last year, he was totally out of production. He was coached by somebody else that said, get a bunch of people on your team. They're all going to make you a ton of money. Each person's worth all this cash. Add to your team. You're going to make all your money from adding people to your team. And he made this much. He looked around. He's like, man, I think they did about $3 million in GCI. And his profit margin was laughable on it. I coached him. I said, well, what's really important to you? He's like, well, I want to make money and I want to have a super healthy business and a super healthy life, but I don't want to lose my life. And so I'm like, dude, you got to get back into production. And on top of getting back into production, you need to add for yourself a showing partner. He is so on fire for it that he's added 2 showing partners. My coaching client is negotiating and lead generating, and he doesn't show any houses. He's not out nurturing those relationships. His team members, his partners are teeing him up for it. On top of that, his business is super profitable because he got rid of all the extra people. He got rid of all the shiny objects and he's super focused. And he went from making this much to this much. 500% growth in profit in 1 year. The way he got there was by simply using the showing partner model and by doing less so he could get more. He's going to touch a lot of deals, but he's now working 45 hours a week. He's not working nights. He's not working weekends. Yeah, he'll pick up his phone and negotiate something here and there, but he's not chasing. It's a pretty unbelievable life. I have another coaching client down in Houston, Texas, and he came to me again with a profit margin that was so small. He was doing 200 transactions or so on his team and profiting about $80,000 a year. And that included his own personal production in there. 200 transactions, $80,000 in profit. That is just not healthy. In the last 2 years now, we've been coaching together 2 years. His profit has grown over 600%, and he no longer works in production. There are ways to have your world grow in a really healthy way, and you have to start holding your money accountable. You have to start saying no to some things. You have to get streamlined on what you're doing. You have to know your numbers, and you should be studying your profit and loss statements and your homes sold and deals pended and how agents are doing and working on conversion rates, treating this like a business because it is irresponsible to do anything else but that. Your finances are dependent on it. Now, somebody asked a great question, wants to hear about a solo or a solo with assistant can profit more. Paul, great question. And I will tell you that the showing partner and or an admin or an assistant will help you get there. Gang, I put together a training module. It is 39 different videos, and it's called How to Build a Real Estate Team. It is the guide to how to do this and to know your numbers. The things I taught today are smidges of what I talk about in that course, of how to profit really well, how to grow something that makes you a plethora of money and you don't lose your time to it. Because whether you're a solo agent or you're somebody growing a large team, it's all the same. It's about hiring right. It's about being a great leader. It's about giving people a world and an ecosystem that builds up a massive amount of support for them. This training module is it's like a monthly subscription thing. It's super easy, low hanging fruit. And we will email that to you with an opportunity for you to jump on that because I'm convinced of this. We've been taught, I don't want to say incorrectly, but we've been taught without all the knowledge. Most of us are running our real estate businesses not knowing our numbers, not studying it, not being analytical, not holding our money accountable. And instead, we're just trying to sell our way to the top, and there's a better way. My profit's up over 300% this year. It's changing my stars. 9 years ago, I was making $40,000 a year as a full-time employee somewhere else. And now the world I get to live in and the stuff I get to have and the gifts I get to be given, like, oh my gosh, your profit of doubling your profit is on the other side of you getting great with these numbers. So those of you watching live, we'll be sending you a replay as well as a link to my training module and some other free stuff that you can gobble up. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to our Hatch Coaching YouTube page. Our channel there has tons of videos that we put everything on. And if you have any content that you want us to teach on, we're trying to do this every week. So please just shoot us a message and I'll probably make a video on it and hopefully it'll be valuable. So with that, I have nothing else for you. God bless and Godspeed.